On a dusty stretch of road in tranquil Meadowbrook, Virginia, Edward Masters stood his ground. Before him, under the harsh midday sun, an irate woman in a sleek designer suit pointed vehemently at Edward's military-issue John Deere tractor, now strapped helplessly to a flatbed truck. Her voice, sharp and commanding, broke the rural silence as she lamented about plummeting property values. Edward, a retired Army Corps of Engineers veteran of 30 years, couldn't help but smile wryly. "Ma'am," he began, his voice steady and imposing, "that tractor you're towing isn't just any tractor. It's property of the United States military." The mixture of shock and horror that quickly painted her face was, indeed, priceless. What was about to unfold would not only challenge her authority, but escalate into a matter of federal concern. Edward was about to demonstrate just how quickly an HOA president's authoritative facade could crumble under the weight of federal oversight. As the tractor was hauled away, the tension on the dusty road in Meadowbrook, Virginia, escalated palpably. Edward Masters stood resolute, his gaze unwavering as he watched Veronica Slate, the newly appointed HOA president, pacing back and forth in her crisp designer suit. Her pointed finger directed traffic, and her voice, laden with authority, barked criticisms about unsightly equipment ruining the pristine image of Willow Creek Estates. Despite the commotion, Edward's demeanor remained composed, his voice embodying decades of military discipline as he awaited a pause in Veronica's fervent complaints. Seizing the moment, he interjected with a clarity and steadiness that commanded attention. "This tractor," he began, his voice carrying over the rumbles of the departing flatbed, "is not merely a piece of farm equipment. It's actually on loan from the United States military." The words settled over the scene with a weighty significance. Veronica's reaction was immediate and visible. The confident, almost imperious air she carried earlier vanished, replaced by a sudden vulnerability. Her expression shifted rapidly, disbelief, confusion, and then fear, as she processed the ramifications of her actions. This wasn't just a simple matter of HOA policy enforcement gone awry. She had potentially committed a federal offense by interfering with government property. The implications of such a mistake began to dawn on her, reflected in the abrupt slackening of her posture and the uncertain glances she cast toward the retreating truck. Edward watched this transformation, knowing well the power of his revelation. It was a crucial turning point, underscoring not just his right to tractor, but also the serious legal protections that came with federal property. This encounter on a quiet Virginia road was shaping up to be a significant battle, one that might redefine the boundaries of community authority and individual rights. After the truck disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a stunned HOA president, Edward turned to walk back to his modest homestead. His steps were slow, each one deliberate, as he mulled over the events. The John Deere 5075 E-Tractor wasn't just any tractor. It was part of a special program designed to support veterans like himself. Through the Department of Defense's Veteran Equipment Preservation Program, he had been entrusted with this military-grade vehicle, not only for agricultural purposes, but also as a means to educate and engage the community about military history and farming. Every quarter, Edward hosted school groups at his farm, where he shared lessons on engineering, agriculture, and military service, tying them together with stories of resilience and innovation. These educational visits were highlights not just for the students, but for the community, reinforcing the value of his farm beyond mere aesthetics. The paperwork for the program was meticulous, underscoring the government's ownership and his role as caretaker. Major Williams, the program's representative, had always praised Edward for his commitment to this dual purpose, emphasizing the importance of his contributions to both the agricultural and military heritage of the nation. Now, with his tractor seized under dubious circumstances, Edward worried about the impact on these community programs. The removal not only threatened his farming operations, but also jeopardized an educational outreach that had become a cornerstone of his post-service life. Determined not to let this setback derail his efforts, Edward began planning his response, intent on recovering the tractor and preserving the educational and communal benefits it facilitated. As Edward reached his farmhouse, he immediately went to his study, a small room lined with shelves of military memorabilia and agricultural manuals. He sat at his desk, where the sunlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating the stack of documents that affirmed his rights. These included zoning laws dating back to 1952, which protected his agricultural activities, and the specific agreements with the Department of Defense regarding the tractor. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the phone to call his attorney, a longtime friend and former military lawyer, who had helped him navigate the acquisition of his land. Together, they reviewed the situation, focusing on the legal protections afforded to military property and the implications of its unauthorized removal by a civilian entity like an HOA. His lawyer was clear. The actions taken by Veronica and the HOA not only breached local zoning laws, but potentially violated federal regulations concerning the handling of military equipment. They drafted a plan to approach the HOA formally, demanding the immediate return of the tractor under threat of legal action, emphasizing the federal nature of the property. This initial legal push was designed not just to recover the tractor, but to set a precedent that Edward's lawful activities could not be overridden by the aesthetic preferences of a suburban community development. Armed with legal documents and a firm strategy, Edward decided to confront the HOA at their next meeting, which was conveniently scheduled for the following day. He arrived early, the only farmer in a room full of polished executives and manicured lawns enthusiasts. As he entered, his presence alone caused murmurs. His rugged attire and determined gaze contrasted sharply with the casual luxury around him. When it was his turn to speak, Edward stood confidently at the podium, his voice firm and unwavering. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, addressing the room with a respectful nod, "I am here not just as a farmer, but as a caretaker of property that belongs to the United States military." He laid out the documents on the podium, each one a testament to his rights and responsibilities. "The tractor that was removed from my property is not just an agricultural tool. It's part of a federal program that supports veterans and educates our community." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "Its removal, based on an aesthetic judgment by this association, constitutes a serious legal error, one that involves federal property laws." Edward explained the potential consequences of their actions, including federal penalties for mishandling government equipment. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation dawned on the HOA members. Edward concluded his speech by requesting the immediate return of the tractor and an official apology from the HOA, hinting at further legal actions if his demands were not met swiftly. The silence that followed Edward's presentation was palpable. Members of the HOA board exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of the situation slowly dawning on them. Veronica Slate, the HOA president who had initially ordered the tractor's removal, was the first to respond. Her voice, once assertive and commanding, now carried a hint of defensiveness. "Mr. Masters, we were not aware of the federal implications of this action. We will need to consult with our legal team before we can proceed." Edward nodded, his expression stern yet composed. "I expect a swift resolution," he said, his tone implying that delay was not an option. As the meeting adjourned, whispers filled the room, and several HOA members approached Edward, expressing their concerns and apologizing for the oversight. The news of the incident spread quickly through the community, stirring a mixture of support for Edward and criticism of the HOA's hasty decisions. By the next day, the story had ignited a significant backlash against the HOA's leadership. Residents began to question the association's governance and extent of its power, particularly regarding how it handled the rights of non-HOA members like Edward. The community's perception of the HOA was shifting, and calls for more transparent and considerate decision-making processes grew louder. This community response underscored the importance of respecting individual rights and the legal boundaries that protect them. In the days following the HOA meeting, Veronica and the board engaged in urgent consultations with their legal advisors. The seriousness of potentially facing federal charges for the mishandling of government property put immense pressure on them to rectify the situation swiftly. Their legal team advised them of the gravity of Edward's claims and the potential repercussions they could face if they did not act promptly and appropriately. Realizing the potential for significant legal and public relations disasters, the HOA decided on a course of action that would both comply with legal requirements and attempt to mend fences with Edward and the broader community. They issued a formal statement acknowledging the oversight and misunderstanding regarding the federal status of the tractor and expressing their intent to resolve the matter in compliance with all applicable laws. The statement was released to the community through various channels, including the HOA's newsletter and local social media groups. which had been buzzing with discussions about the incident. In the statement, the HOA also announced a special meeting to address community concerns and provide a platform for open dialogue. This move was designed to show their commitment to transparency and to restoring trust within the community. The special meeting called by the HOA was marked by a heightened sense of community interest and media presence, reflecting the significance of the incident not just for Edward, but for the entire Meadowbrook area. The HOA board, now more cautious and visibly humbled, opened the meeting by reiterating their commitment to lawful governance and respect for all community members, whether they were part of the HOA or not. Veronica Slate took the lead, offering a public apology to Edward in front of the assembled residents and media. "We sincerely regret the actions taken against Mr. Masters' property without a full understanding of its legal protections," she stated. "Effective immediately, we are returning the tractor to Mr. Masters and will ensure that no such oversight occurs in the future." Later that day, Edward's tractor was returned, accompanied by a formal letter of apology and a document outlining the HOA's new procedures for handling disputes involving non-HOA property. This document included measures to improve communication between the HOA and the surrounding community, especially regarding property that might be under different legal protections. The return of the tractor was a victory for Edward, but more importantly, it was a public demonstration of the HOA's newfound respect for the rights and contributions of all community members. This resolution not only restored Edward's ability to continue his farming and educational programs, but also strengthened the community's trust in the HOA's leadership. With the tractor back in his possession and the community's support bolstered, Edward seized the opportunity to enhance his educational outreach. He organized an open day at his farm, inviting residents of Meadowbrook and surrounding areas, including members of the HOA, to learn more about the integration of agriculture, engineering, and military history. The event was a resounding success. Children and adults alike were fascinated by the demonstrations of the tractor's capabilities, and Edward's detailed explanations of how military precision and technology could be applied in agricultural settings. He also set up displays detailing the history of military contributions to technological advances in farming, emphasizing the importance of preserving these programs for future generations. This initiative not only solidified Edward's farm as an invaluable educational resource, but also mended and strengthened community ties. The residents left with a deeper understanding and appreciation of the vital role that agriculture plays in their lives and the unique contributions of veterans like Edward. The event also served to rehabilitate the HOA's image, illustrating their support for local heritage and educational initiatives. The successful resolution of the tractor incident and the subsequent community outreach event had a lasting impact on Willow Creek Estates and the broader Meadowbrook community. Inspired by the positive feedback from Edward's educational day, the HOA began to reconsider its policies regarding community aesthetics and the integration of non-HOA properties. In collaboration with Edward and other local leaders, the HOA developed a new set of guidelines that respected both the aesthetic standards of the community and the functional necessities of local farms and other rural properties. These guidelines were designed to prevent future conflicts and promote a harmonious living environment for all residents, regardless of whether they were part of the HOA. Additionally, the HOA initiated a series of regular community forums where residents could voice their concerns, propose ideas, and directly participate in the decision-making process. These forums were aimed at ensuring transparency and inclusivity in the HOA's operations, giving both members and non-members a stake in community development. These changes not only improved the relationship between the HOA and the surrounding community, but also set a precedent for other residential communities facing similar challenges. Edward's case became a well-regarded example of how dialogue and respect for legal and cultural heritage could lead to positive outcomes in community management. The resolution of the tractor dispute and the subsequent changes in community policy had a profound effect on Edward's life and his standing in the community. Recognized now not only as a farmer, but also as an advocate for veterans and agriculture education, Edward continued to leverage his experience to benefit others. He became a regular speaker at regional conferences and workshops, sharing his story to illustrate the importance of understanding and respecting legal rights and the value of community engagement. His farm expanded its educational programs, partnering with local schools and veteran groups to offer workshops and field trips that taught not just about farming and military history, but also about civic responsibility and community advocacy. Edwards' efforts helped to foster a new generation of informed citizens who understood the complexities of community living and the importance of preserving cultural and historical assets. His work ensured that his legacy would be remembered not just with conflict with the HOA, but for the positive changes that conflict ignited. Years later, the Meadowbrook community would continue to celebrate Edwards' contributions with an annual Edward Masters Day, featuring community activities, educational programs, and a reminder of the importance of unity and respect in diverse communities.